You're cruising along, everything feels calm, and then the plane suddenly jolts. A quick dip, a shiver through the cabin, the seatbelt sign lights up, and for a moment your mind freezes. That tiny drop feels huge. Your stomach flips, you wonder if something's wrong. But here's the truth most people never hear. Turbulence feels dramatic, but it's almost never dangerous. The plane isn't falling, the pilots aren't surprised, and the aircraft isn't anywhere near its limits. It's simply moving through shifting air, something it was built to handle from the very first design sketch. So why does it feel so intense? What's actually happening to the airplane when it shakes? And why do pilots stay so calm when passengers tense up? To understand that, you need to know what turbulence really is. Let's start there. People imagine the sky as a smooth, empty space, a clean blue highway where planes glide along undisturbed, but the sky is nothing like that. The air above us moves constantly, shifting in layers and currents, rising here, sinking there, mixing temperatures and speeds the same way the ocean mixes its waves. When a plane shakes, it's not because something has gone wrong, it's simply meeting a patch of air that's moving differently from the air around it. Some of these movements come from powerful high-altitude winds called jet streams. Airlines sometimes intentionally ride inside a jet stream to save fuel, gaining over 100 miles per hour of extra ground speed. But crossing in and out of it is where the bumps appear. They race across the planet in narrow bands, and when an aircraft crosses their edges, the change in wind speed can jolt the plane slightly. It feels sudden to the passengers, but pilots expect it and often adjust altitude to find calmer layers. Heat can create turbulence too. On warm days, pockets of rising air climb towards the upper atmosphere. When those pockets meet cooler air above it, the mix becomes bumpy. This is why flights near thunderstorms or over deserts can feel rougher. The air beneath the plane is literally boiling upwards. Inside a mature thunderstorm, vertical currents can exceed 5,000 feet per minute, which is exactly why commercial aircraft never fly through them and always detour around the entire system. Pilots avoid the strongest convection zones, using radar to steer safely around them, but the surrounding atmosphere can still ripple. Even mountains can disturb the air. When wind hits a mountain range, it's forced up and then tumbles down the other side in long waves that extend for miles. A plane passing through these invisible waves might rise and sink gently, even though everything inside the cockpit remains under complete control. The danger of mountain waves became clear in 1966 when a Boeing 707 near Mount Fuji encountered violent vertical gusts, some exceeding 3,000 feet per minute. Events modern routing now avoids entirely. And then there's the kind that surprises everyone: clear air turbulence. No clouds, no storms, nothing to warn you. It usually forms where different layers of air slide past each other near the edges of jet streams, because there's nothing visible to mark these areas. Even modern radar can't detect them. Pilots depend on reports from aircraft ahead to know when it's likely to appear. Despite all of these sources, turbulence almost always stays within a range the aircraft can easily handle. What feels like a sudden drop might only be a few feet of vertical movement, too small for instruments to register as concerning, but big enough to startle a passenger who wasn't expecting it. In fact, the US National Transportation Safety Board notes that most drops passengers describe are between 10 and 30 feet, less than the height of a small building. So if the plane is only shifting slightly, why does your stomach feel like it's dropping out of your body? To answer that, we need to look at what the aircraft itself is doing during turbulence, and what it's designed to withstand. Turbulence feels chaotic from the cabin, but inside the cockpit and inside the structure of the aircraft, it's far more controlled than you might imagine. When the plane shakes, it isn't dropping out of the sky, and it certainly isn't losing control. In most cases, the aircraft is moving only a few feet up or down, less than what your body thinks is happening. Your inner ear magnifies the sensation, and because you can't see the air you're moving through, the movement feels mysterious and threatening. Modern airliners are built with an enormous margin of strength. Before an aircraft is certified, engineers push it through tests that would make most passengers' hearts stop. Wings are bent upward until they flexed almost unbelievably, far beyond anything they'd ever experience in real flight. The fuselage is pressurized again and again, and the airframe is shaken, twisted, and stressed in ways the sky could never replicate. Turbulence, even the rough kind, is nowhere near the limits of what these machines can withstand. When turbulence hits, the aircraft automatically adjusts its attitude. The wings respond the same way a boat rides over small waves. They flex, absorb the change in air pressure, and return to position. The autopilot remains engaged unless the pilot decides otherwise, gently correcting course and smoothing out the motion. To the airplane, turbulence isn't danger, it's just weather. Even the drops people fear are usually tiny. A severe jolt that feels like falling dozens of feet might be a shift of only a few. The cabin exaggerates every sensation because you have no visual reference, no horizons, no landmarks, nothing to judge the motion against. That disconnect fools the brain into thinking the plane is plunging, even though the instruments barely react. What's more interesting is how quickly the aircraft stabilizes itself. The wings keep producing lift, the engines maintain thrust, and the control surfaces adjust automatically. You feel the bump, but the airplane continues flying almost exactly as it should. But if the plane handles turbulence so easily, what are the pilots doing out there during those shaky movements? Let's take a look at how they manage it, long before you ever feel the first bump. If turbulence is so normal, so routine, and so well within the limits of what aircraft are designed for, why does it feel like the sky is falling when it hits? The answer has less to do with aviation and more to do with how the human brain interprets motion, uncertainty, and loss of control. Inside a plane, you have almost no visual reference. On the ground, you can see bumps coming, you can watch a road dip or a car turn. Even on a ship, you can see waves rise and fall before you feel them. But inside an aircraft, the cabin is a sealed box. You can't see the air currents ahead or the atmosphere shifting around you. When turbulence hits, it arrives without warning, and your brain fills in the blanks with whatever it thinks is most likely, usually danger. There's another factor that tricks people, the disconnect between sound and movement. Jet engines hum steadily even as the plane moves through uneven air, which creates a mismatch between what your ears hear and what your body feels. That mismatch exaggerates every sensation. A tiny rise or drop feels dramatic simply because your senses can't anchor it to anything familiar. Then there's the primal element. Humans aren't built for flight. Our instincts evolved on the ground, where sudden drops meant cliffs, holes, or danger. Your stomach dropping for even a split second triggers that old instinct, even though the aircraft hasn't done anything remotely unsafe. You're reacting emotionally to something the plane is handling mechanically. But it doesn't help that turbulence gets dramatized in movies and TV shows. The sudden, violent lurch is treated like a sign of impending doom. In reality, what you see on screen is not how turbulence behaves. Pilots don't scream into radios, masks don't automatically drop, and cabins don't tilt like amusement park rides. Actual turbulence feels more like a series of strong bumps on a rough road than an airborne disaster. And here's a fact that surprises most people. Turbulence almost never injures anyone who is wearing a seatbelt. The vast majority of injuries come from passengers standing, walking, or not buckled in. The plane can handle the bumps. It's the humans inside who are sometimes unprepared for them. So the fear isn't about what's happening to the plane, it's about what's happening in your head. A mix of instinct, uncertainty, and a lack of control. Understanding the reality chips away at that fear, but there's still one big question left. Should you actually be scared of turbulence at all? And is there any real danger hidden behind the bumps? That's where everything comes together. Let's look at what turbulence can do, and more importantly, what it can't do. This is the question every anxious flyer circles back to. The plane shakes, your pulse jumps, and no matter how many times you remind yourself that turbulence is normal, a small voice still asks, is this safe? Can turbulence actually bring a plane down? To answer that honestly, you need to understand what turbulence can do and what it simply cannot do. Turbulence can absolutely feel uncomfortable. It can spill drinks, rattle overhead bins, and make a calm cabin suddenly tense. It can jolt you hard enough to make your stomach flip. And if someone is walking around when a sharp bump hits, they might lose their balance. These are real effects, and they're why airlines remind you to keep your seatbelt fastened even when the sign is off. But turbulence cannot tear the wings off an aircraft. It cannot slap the fuselage. It cannot cause engines to fail. And it cannot bring a modern airliner down. No commercial aviation accident in modern aviation has been caused by turbulence alone. When you feel the plane shake, you are experiencing something the aircraft is overbuilt to handle, something it was tested for repeatedly long before it ever carried its first passenger. Most of the dramatic movement you feel isn't actually the plane dropping dramatically. It's tiny adjustments in altitude amplified by your senses. Pilots often explain it by comparing it to driving over a rough patch of road. The car shakes, the ride gets bumpy, but you're not in danger and the vehicle isn't struggling. The environment is just uneven for a moment, and then it smooths out. There's another reassuring truth. Pilots avoid the worst turbulence long before you ever reach it. The sky is full of weather reports, radar images, and other aircraft calling out rough spots. By the time your plane passes through a choppy area, chances are it's already the mildest path available. Severe turbulence, the kind people imagine, is rare, and professional crews treat it with the same calm familiarity that comes from decades of training. Even in those rare severe cases, the aircraft is well within its structural limits. The wings flex because they're designed to. The body shakes because it's supposed to absorb movement, not resist it. Turbulence doesn't push the plane anywhere near what it can handle. So, should you be scared of turbulence? The honest answer is no. You might not enjoy it. Most people don't, but fear and danger aren't the same thing. The fear is instinctive, rooted in old human instincts and a lack of visibility. The danger is practically non-existent. Knowledge doesn't erase discomfort, but it does replace panic with perspective, and that alone can change the entire flight experience. Now that we understand turbulence from every angle, the science, the sensations, the engineering, and the emotion, there's only one thing left to do: bring it all together and land the plane. Turbulence feels dramatic in the moment, but it isn't a sign that something's wrong. It's just the atmosphere doing what it always does, and your airplane handling it exactly the way it was designed to. Pilots train for it constantly. The aircraft is built around it, and the bumps you feel are only a tiny fraction of what the structure can actually take. So if your next flight shakes a little, try to remember the bigger picture. The sky isn't turning against you, it's just moving, and the plane knows how to move with it. If there's something else about flying you want explained in simple, clear terms, leave it in the comments. I'll go through them and choose the ones everyone's most curious about. And if you want more honest human stories about how aviation really works, hit like, subscribe, and stick around for more stories from the skies.